Welcome back, everyone. This is Axum from Fire Emblem. Today I am joined by the one, the only, Donlot.
I'm Donlot. I have a YouTube channel where I do Ironmans and stuff. I love doing Ironmans. I do streams mainly nowadays.
The link to his channel is going to be down in the description below, so please check that out. Speaking of Ironmans, today's video is actually going to be an interesting topic. It is, why is Iron Man the best way to play Fire Emblem? I want to hear your takes on this because do you majority only play Iron Man? Like, is that the only style?
I pretty much like 99% only play Iron Man. There's very few cases where I do not. When I was a kid, I obviously never really did Ironmans. I just played like the completionist way, let me just say. Where, oh no, a unit died, I'm gonna reset. Why not try this whole Iron Manning thing? This is a lot more fun.
So I like that you brought up that in the beginning you used to play completionist, because that's kind of what happened to me too. I used to play almost exclusively completionist. I was all about getting all the chests, getting all the items, doing all the conversations and I still, till this day, I still do it. I actually think that to some degree, some completionist challenges are actually harder than certain Ironmans, because to reach a certain village in a certain amount of time is sometimes more difficult than just one turning a map.
I view Fire Emblem as not really a strategy RPG, kind of more like a army simulator, if that makes any sense. Like, you're the commander of your army. These are your soldiers, right? You're treating them kind of like your children in some sense. Like, oh, I gotta watch over those. I gotta protect them. And you see the relationships that form in your army with your characters. And you want to keep them alive, right? And it's kind of like, imagine you're an actual commander, like in a medieval setting. And then you go through a hard battle. You're constantly understaffed compared to the enemy, and you really have to think on your toes. You make plans, but some of those plans just don't work out. Sometimes due to your own fault, because it might just be a stupid plan. Sometimes something unexpected comes in, like in Fire Emblem, it would be like maybe a low % crit or something, and suddenly your plan breaks apart. What do you do now? Well, you have to improvise. You can't load a save state in real life. Right? And that's the same thing with Ironmans.
I put out a video on this a while back, how to Iron Man for Dummies. And in that video, I talk about how no matter what unit you lose, usually you can still complete the game. Like, no matter who you lose, odds are you're still going to beat the game. And the dynamic storytelling aspect that you're bringing up actually reminds me, because when I was playing FE6 Iron Man, I went through the Sakai route because I lost Zealot. So I didn't have a choice. I had to go through the Sakai route. I had to do those chapters, which are, in my opinion, significantly more difficult than those of Ilya. So I warped Deacon regardless of him surviving or not. He killed the one bolting guy, and then he got hit by the ballista and the bolting guy and died, unfortunately. But part of that was that dynamic storytelling. Like, Deke will always go down as the biggest hero of that run, because without him there, I wouldn't have completed it.
I had something very funny happen to me. So I made Wendell a sniper because he's actually really fast and better as a sniper than as a sage, I find. He got low % crit, so I lose a staff user, right? Because he's usually a very good staff user. But just behind him was another one of my staff users, my only other staff user. You have Violent in that game, and he's normally not that good, but you can make him a curate, you can make him a healer, so he gets really quick XP gains and really quick speed growth. I was like, you know what, that sounds like a good idea. So I did that. I used him kind of as a joke in some sense, because I just wanted speed levels. He ended up getting C rank and staves at the end. I'm now forced to use Violent, the Cavalier, as a healer, despite him not even having any magic. And I ended up having to do that until he hit level 20. He ended up becoming the hero of my run.
Shadow Dragon in particular is very good game to Iron Man, right? Because all the solutions to the problems you have are usually given to you in that game. Regardless if you lose a character here or there, you're gonna get around it as long as Marth doesn't die. So it's definitely the one I usually recommend people. They want to Iron Man. I'm like, start with that. Start with that. Maybe don't start at hard 5, but start at like hard 2 or even hard 1, whatever. Like, if it's your first time, it's whatever.
I do have another thing I want to mention, going back to the dynamic storytelling thing. I don't know if you've ever read the story of Path of Radiance while doing an Iron Man. If you lose Soren on his first map, you'll get an event for that. If you lose Oscar or Boyd in the early maps, you get an event for that. Yep. You get an event for nearly everything early on. You can integrate it very well into the story, because Ike is like a very reluctant commander, right? He's very kind of scared of taking leadership, I would say.
Yeah, he's inexperienced, right?
But if you do like a completionist run, he's like this perfect commander, he never really does any issues. You do an Iron Man, right? And suddenly Grail wouldn't have lost Boyd there, right? These are basic enemies. How could you lose Titania to level 1 bandits? His reluctance to take up leadership just makes so much more sense.
Do you feel that the Dancer and the Thieves are the first to go in an Ironman?
For me, definitely not the Thief, I would say, because most of the times I use Thieves, I'm extra careful with them, or like in FE6, the Thieves are actually pretty good. But Dancers, yeah, kinda, because they're just so squishy. But you also always want them on the front lines because you want to dance with them, right?
I don't think there's been a single Ironman I've done that a thief has not died. By either my inadequacy, I underestimate their lack of combat capability, and I wind up putting them too deep sometimes, and then they just get sniped.
And that's also one thing I feel like in Ironmans. You won't do certain things you would normally do outside of an Ironman. You really have to think, okay, I could do this and I have a pretty good chance of like coming out of this unscathed. But do I really want to put my unit through like 5 low % crits maybe? So maybe I want to rethink my plan. There's 5 enemies, I have 5 units, but oh, then I suddenly miss an 80. You always got to have a backup plan for your backup plan.
No, 100%. There's 2 rules that I do in Ironman, right? When you commit, you either have to go fully in and you have to make absolutely sure that you're going to kill everything. The second rule, when in doubt, pull out. Pull back. Barring like Xenolog 6 of Engage, there's no situation in where you pull back is going to really make a detriment to the degree that you can't beat it, you know?
I think there's a couple of chapters like with time limits that you pulling back might not be a good idea on.
But I say on average.
But generally,
yeah, on average.
On average, yeah, definitely though. I like to call it like you pull back, you maybe do like a shield wall formation, and then you do the counterattack. You want to attack the enemy on your terms, not on their terms. And if you can get them close to you so all of your units can attack them really well, that might just be the better choice.
Park a very tanky unit at the tip of the range of the enemy phase formation. It breaks up their block formation, and then you go in and player phase them the turn after once they've been softened up. I've seen you do your Path of Radiance Maniac mode, and I see that you use Braum, and I did not use the General at all. It's interesting to see how these different strategies work. So seeing you, it was a lot of enemy phase baiting and then switching up to aggressive phases. In my playthrough, it was a lot more like horses come in and then canto out. But it's really cool to see that there are always different solutions to the game. Always. I'm always impressed to see other people. And you're like using Shannon. That's impressive. Yeah. That is impressive, okay? Because I love Shannon in Radiant Dawn, but in Path of Radiance, that's a hard sell.
Yeah, the thing with Shannon was I kind of just was like, I had a lot of deaths early on, so I had the character slots or the unit slots for Rolf. If I'm using Rolf, I might as well use Shannon for the joke.
Yeah, doesn't.
And I got them an A support and everything, and they were actually pretty useful together. One thing, and this is also a thing I found, if you do Ironmans, you tend to, like, maybe your good units die. The units you wanted to use are dead. So you're forced to use units you normally wouldn't.
There is definitely a degree of opinions that change once you start doing Ironmans. In particular, I think one of the people that changed my opinion 100% was Etzel in New Mystery. Bro, but he can wield Excalibur and B-rank tomes at base. It's why that's another thing too. People really underestimate how good having high weapon rank is. It is really good. It will legitimately make me decide if I'm going to use a unit over another one depending on their weapon rank. I don't even care if somebody has like less 2 stats on average than another unit. If they have A ranks, they can use silver weapons. Or even better if they're staves. If they're staves, it's nuts. Because stave utility allows so many options.
That's true.
And it's a problem that I don't see people bring up enough. They really underestimate the power of weapon ranks. Even a unit as simple as Cain and Abel, right? Since we're talking about Shadow Dragon, one of them has the ability to use javelins at base. The other one does not. That is huge. I don't know about you, but that to me is huge.
No, I agree.
It's one unit can chip from range without taking damage on retaliation. The other one is locked to a completely different playstyle. When I am Ironmanning, I tend to really spend a lot of time in the battle prep menu just because I don't want to get caught off guard. Particularly in maps that I know they have siege tomes, like Gritnia Tower has 5 or 6 mages that have siege tomes on the map. That's actually the number one thing that usually kills my units is a siege tome. Yeah,
siege tomes are such a bad mechanic.
They're brutal, and they're also so unfair in Ironmans. It's like, oh, okay, I just sniped your weakest resistance unit from a mile away, and you can't do anything about it. So good luck with that.
It's just boring to fight against them, I find, in most instances.
Yeah.
Because they do so much damage as well. On the topic of ambush spawns, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I actually like them. And I think people cope too much about them, especially in FE6. Because I wish the game would explain this a little bit more to you. But in FE6, ambush spawns are very, very telegraphed. The game pretty much spawns them in the exact same locations every time. They spawn them behind you, on forts, on stairs, on entryways, and on exits. So what I would do is I would kind of form a wall with my physical units, and then have my like healers and stuff, like kind of like a caravan to move through there, and then I would close the caravan off.
I agree with you, and on average, because you were right, it usually is telegraphed. It's usually like, there's a fort here, odds are it can come out. For the majority of it, you put a unit there, the reinforcement won't spawn. The only situations in which I'll say that I don't really like them at all, and I don't think they're cool, is if you remember the burn map at the very end, that they're done by waves of wherever you cross on the map, you trigger the reinforcements. And that one, they just do not say from where, how many, or what type.
I would actually disagree with that. That map is my favorite map in the series.
Really? You like that?
Yes.
I do not like that map.
I absolutely love the map where
that
you fight
map
Murdoch.
Is a juggernaut enemy phase map that is just... It's
No. I play
like
it player face. I play it player face.
Yeah,
so,
but you could play a player phase, but I still don't think it's a good design in that case. Like, I usually park 3 units and enemy phase everything that comes at me. Also in Thracia, they spawn like same turn ballista reinforcements. Man, that's not, it's not fun.
Okay, that's
it's
pretty,
not. It's I'm being honest, it's just not fun. Like, there's some things that you're just like, come on, man. Like,
that sounds pretty bad. Yeah.
How is I supposed to deal with this? It depends on game to game, but I do agree with you that if you know ahead of time, it's not as bad. I do like that they kind of moved away from it and more aggressively statted, or that more difficult to deal with.
I'm not sure. I kind of like both of those things, but I feel like you don't even need to be directly told about ambush spawns. You need to explain and teach the player as well as possible. Maybe even tell the player outright, be careful of those areas, because you never know when something might arrive from there. If you do that, and if you like don't overdo it with the ambush spawns, like you spawn like 10 ballistas at once or something ludicrous like that.
How do you feel the prioritization of combat over utility comes to play into Ironmans?
Okay, so it really depends on the game. It depends how much of a resource you have available. Going back to Trek, Noah, Alan, and Lance, normally you don't really have a reason to use Trek or Noah, right, if you have Alan and Lance. But if Alan and Lance are dead, you're going to be really, really glad you have a Cavalier, even if they're worse than the other ones you would have, just because they fill a role that nobody else can fulfill. And it's really, really noticeable in FE9 Maniac mode, I find, in an Ironman there, because you have barely any staff units. In essence, you have like 5 healers you can use.
Yeah.
So in that game, if you lose a single healer, it's such a big blow to you. Maybe training up Tormod or Ilyana to level 10, even if you don't plan on using them, just so you have a backup staff unit you can like early promote.
Fulfill a niche that nobody else can, and ergo they become more valuable.
So this is a little bit of a different topic, but I really don't like how ratings are done in Fire Emblem, the whole tier list thing and stuff, because I feel like it doesn't really tell you much about the unit. I came up with this thing that I want to develop further, which is like, I call it role fulfillment system, where you look at a unit and you look, okay, how much investment does this unit need to fulfill certain roles, right? Maybe the role can be something like they're very high mobility, they're very tanky, they have staff utility, they have certain skills that are very, very useful to you. It's much better to rate units that way. If you don't know anything about a game or its units, knowing what role they fulfill and how much investment they need to fulfill that role is much, much more useful to you.
The weight of how good a unit is also depends on what they can contribute on. Say, for example, Stefan is a great combat unit. Right? Nobody's going to deny that he's not good at combat, but he can't do multiple rounds of combat. He also can't move to a place really fast because he's infantry locked. He looks like a great unit because he has great stats, and he definitely kills any unit one-on-one in the game up until that point. But where is the cutoff of utility in that regard? I would much rather prefer Titania than Stefan because of how much Titania can contribute, for how long she can contribute, the type of class she's in, and so on and so forth. So maybe you should publish this this list of yours, because it sounds pretty good.
I feel like stats change in an Ironman. Normally with like low luck units, you do notice the low percent crits, but even if they do happen, like you can just reload. It's not that big of a deal in a completionist run. But if it's an Iron Man, if you get attacked like 50 times with 5% chance to get crit over the course of the game, it will eventually happen. Luck suddenly becomes way better than before in an Iron Man.
True.
And
Your main lord also becomes a lot more vulnerable in an Iron Man too.
So you want to be more careful with them as well. And the other stat I feel, I've really noticed this in FE6 with Barf, who I think is a really good unit. Defense is much, much better in an Iron Man. Because what Barf, for example, can do is he can enemy phase a bunch of units, do a relatively good amount of damage thanks to his high strength, and not take all that much damage in return, right?
I definitely see where you're coming from. I don't know if I agree particularly just because I've usually found that on average, there are other units that reach those defense thresholds that aren't necessarily confined to like 5 move. But that's a problem that we see across the series a lot.
Yes. And I think low movement is fine.
Yes.
But you need good map design to come along with it. Because at the end of the day, what matters is what can you do with your movement?
Yes.
Because say you know there's like enemies coming from behind, like you can use an armor knight. They don't need to be at the very front. They don't need to lead your charge. They just need to secure your backline.
Precisely because most of the movement in that case on an enemy phase is done by the enemy.
So I think that's something that people often don't appreciate or don't think about when saying, oh, this unit has low move.
An example that we can tangibly see right now is Braum. For example, I never used Braum. Even when I did Maniac mode, I did not use Braum. Because my first thought was, why am I going to use Braum in a game that's filled with calves? Like, how could he possibly be any good? But then I saw you guys use him, and I was like, now that is an interesting way to use him in the manner that you guys use him. Which is super cool. And I respect that a lot. Even though it's not the playstyle that I would adopt, it's still super, super smart of you guys to figure that out, you know?
You get attacked by 5 enemies. They all do 5 damage. That's 25 damage, right?
Correct.
But you get 1 more point of defense, that's suddenly 20 damage. You reduce the damage by 5, not by 1, by 5. And I find like in most games, around the 20-22 mark is when you notice defense like snowballing.
Snowballing that threshold is something that people don't consider as much. And that goes back into the strategies portions of Ironman, right? Like you usually have an idea of how you want to tackle each map.
Yeah.
And Clash is a great example of that, sending like Braum upwards to deal with, or Gatry upwards to deal with all those reinforcements, or plugging the bottom left with Tauronian and then moving up with your troops. Like whatever you want to do. It always has to do with how do you want to tackle that portion of Ironmans. Like, right? How do you want to minimize your casualties while maximizing your enemy density slaughtering, basically. The other topic I wanted to ask you about is usually how do you feel you prioritize your unit choice or decision in your gameplay?
I think most of the time it's legitimately just how much fun I have with a unit. You always want to have at least 1 or 2 staff users. Maybe have 1 in backup you can easily train. Unit who can take some like damage. Doesn't even have to be an armor knight. You want to have your roles fulfilled essentially. I always like to make good use of supports. I feel like FE6 is a game where people really often ignore the supports because they're just so slow. But I actually kind of like that because it means that the units who do have quick supports, that's like an actual huge bonus they have over other units. There's also one little thing I want to talk about as well. A good amount of people, I would say, are also a little bit scared about like, oh, I'm going to lose out on stuff in the game. I will not see stuff that I would have seen if I did like a completionist run, right? If I do an Ironman. Because the unit dies, I don't get to see dialogue, I don't get to see this part of the game. Especially for a blind run, I can understand that somewhat. If you really enjoy a game, you're probably going to replay it. If you do not enjoy a game, or get any like maybe educational value for it, or any sort of value from it in general, why would you play it again? Why would you care about it in the first place? If you think about it, you lose out on content you don't really care about seeing either way, or you lose out on content on a good game you want to replay, so when you replay it and you get to see that content, you feel like you found something new in a game you already enjoy, right? You have replay value.
Yeah, that's a lot. A lot of replay value comes from Ironmans too, because RNG is random, right? So every time something different can happen, you never know. Me personally, I usually tend to play one completionist run first on the highest difficulty to get everything, and then the second time I just go into Ironmans, because then I'm like, whatever. I saw all the content. Now I just want to do strategy and deal with randomness. Like that's how I play on the second run forward.
I used to do that, but by now I always Ironman first, blind Ironman, because I feel like you can only play a game blind once. And I've especially noticed this with Berwick, which I'm still playing. I had a couple of units die, and a couple of things that I missed out on. I haven't even finished my first playthrough, and I'm already excited for my second one, because I know I will finally get to see the things I missed out on.
That's a good way too. It's almost like a motivator for you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conversations around Ironmans are too stress-inducing. They get too nervous when they play Ironmans. And they're like, no, but I can't lose a unit and whatnot. And I think that, honestly, this is going to sound weird, but after your first one, it's all better. You know what I mean? After you lose that first unit, you're like, okay, I can lose any unit now. Because now, once you get over that hump of that fear of, oh my god, I lost this unit, I can't continue, is when you realize, like, you can always continue. There is always a way to go out of that.
People severely underestimate their abilities to Ironman. Because if you see somebody Ironman a game, it's usually on the hardest difficulty, right? You tend not to see a FE6 normal mode Ironman. If you don't feel competent enough, do like hard mode Ironman, maybe just do normal mode. People are not gonna cry about you because you played normal mode Ironman instead of hard mode as your first one, right? Play where you feel like you can do it, right? But even if you do, I feel like most people can do better than they think they can.
You're absolutely right. People should play within the range of what they feel comfortable at. I personally will never shame anybody for trying an Ironman on normal mode. I think you have to start somewhere, and if it's something that you find appealing, you should definitely go for it.
Yeah, I would say just give it a try.
Alrighty, everyone. So today that was a discussion with Donlot about Fire Emblem and why playing Ironman is the best way to go. Donlot, I want to thank you so much for being here today, for being on the channel and contributing. I really 100% appreciate it. I definitely want to do more stuff with you in the future if you're down.
Yeah, thank you for having me contribute here, and I'd be definitely down to do more on the channel as well. This was super fun.
His link is going to be down below, so please go ahead, check out his channel, check out his Ironmans. They're so much fun. Please leave a like and subscribe. Let us know how you feel about Ironmans. Did this help you in order for you to conquer your fears of Ironman so that you can go out and conquer Lunatic Plus New Mystery of the Emblem? That's what I want to see. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.